Some wars end on paper long before they ever end inside the people who live them. In 2008, Canada was losing sons and daughters in Afghanistan at a pace so alarming that the evening news felt more like a casualty report. On July 6th of 2008, a medic from my unit, somebody who I knew quite well, somebody who I thought of as a brother, was killed in Afghanistan while on patrol. Private Colin Wilmot. 13 years later, long after the bullets were fired and the bombs dropped and exploded, I was part of a remarkable story that involved both Colin, myself, and the medic whom at the time I did not know, but I would become linked with for life. In 2019, I wrote and published my memoir, A Medic's Mind. In that book, I talk about Colin. I talk about our time in the military together. I talk about who he was to me, who he was to the unit, how he received the moniker of always positive, and how I knew him to be always professional, always kind, and always unwavering. I also talk about the loss, about what it feels like every passing July 6th, how grief makes yesterday feel like today, and tomorrow feel like an impossibility. Here we are in 2026, and I spent the better part of the morning crying my eyes out, thinking about Colin. But the thing is, it's okay to shed tears. It's okay to mourn a guy like Colin. He was so remarkable, so special, so unbelievably important to this country, and important to me and my story. A few years back, I received a package in the mail, and it was from a soldier whom I didn't know at the time, but they had read my book, The Medic's Mind, and they read about Colin. And they reached out to me just before Christmas, and they said, "Matthew, I have something that belongs to you. Can I please have your address?" So I gave it to him, and he sent me this package. And a few days before Christmas, it arrived, and I opened it, and inside was a dusty old Oilers t-shirt and a note. And the note explained that this soldier, the one reaching out to me, had deployed in Colin's place. He took over his position, he took over his bunk, everything. He was sleeping right where Colin slept. And he found this dusty old Oilers shirt, and the base that he was staying at, the forward observation base, was due to be torn down and repurposed. So he grabbed the shirt and brought it with him in hopes that it wouldn't get lost, so that when he returned to Canada, he'd find a permanent custodian for it. And so he held on to it, and he looked for a permanent custodian. He reached out to family, and family didn't want it. And he held on to this shirt for 13 years until he happened to come across my book, read the story about Colin and me, and mail me the shirt. And I was so moved by this that I ended up writing a Facebook post. And that Facebook post ended up reaching thousands of people, including the CBC, who asked for an interview with me and Phil. And this, what I'm about to share with you, is that interview with Natasha Fata from the CBC. Now, say what you want about the CBC. This is not a political post. This is something that transcends politics, even though it has roots deeply embedded within geopolitics. This is the story of a dear friend and somebody who I will always miss. So a good friend of mine that got to the unit a short time after I did, his name was Colin Wilmot, Private Colin Wilmot. He came to the unit a short time after I did, and from day one, he was motivated to get on a tour. That's all he wanted to do. He just wanted to serve in the military. He wanted to go overseas and do his job, and he was an incredibly witty and an intelligent young man, and great fun to be around. You know, he bust my chops with the best of them, and he's just overall just this infectious happiness about him. He was always positive no matter what was going on. Whenever we're late on the range and it was cold and you're kind of miserable, kind of hungry, he was the first guy to crack a joke and kind of just say, where else in life do you get to do this sort of stuff? Originally, he was just an alternate for the tour, meaning that if anybody was to be injured or unfit to deploy or whatever, then he would be potentially scheduled to go, and he did. He ended up going, and on the 6th of July of 2008, he was killed in Afghanistan.
So I ended up inheriting his bunk, and one thing I remember, the very first day we were there, we had a busy day. It didn't get to start with a broken finger or a spider bite or anything simple like that. It was thrown in from the deep end. I remember being like just kind of shattered at the end of this first day and getting into bed, climbed into my bed, just flopped down and looked over to the side, and where this styrofoam insulation was, he had written with a ballpoint pen, "Colin hearts you," like with a little heart, like an emoji. And I was like, wow, man, he wrote that message at some point, just a piece of graffiti. And it was just kind of like cool to, I don't know, it was kind of moving to see that. And in the bunker, his t-shirt hung up on the wall, and it was there as a sort of a makeshift memorial to him. And at the end of our tour, we heard that, we learned of the plans. They were going to be rearranging the Fort operating base and moving the UMS down closer to the helicopter landing pad, and the medic bunker was going to be moved as well. So not wanting his t-shirt to get lost, I took it down off the wall and I brought it home with me. My intention was to give it to his family. I got in touch with his sister through Facebook once I was back in Canada. She and explained that I had it. She suggested that, she appreciated it, but suggested that maybe I might find a better home for it with one of his friends.
I got this package in the mail and I opened it up, and inside of it, there's this kind of dust-stained old white Edmonton Oilers shirt in a Ziploc bag. So I put that down on my lap, and then I pick up this note. I read the note, and the note went on to explain that the shirt was actually belonging to Colin Wilmot, and Phil came into possession of it when he was overseas. So he held on to it for 13 years. And right up until he read my book and read about Colin, read about how I felt about Colin, and that thing that he said belongs to me was Colin's Edmonton Oilers t-shirt. He sent it to me just before Christmas. So it was almost like Colin came for a visit at Christmas.